Hey guys, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to this video tutorial on how to master an EDM pop electronic dance track with iZotope Ozone 7, which is an entire suite of plugins, but you can also open it up as one integrated plugin with all of the individual components within it. So this is sort of kind of like a bonus video tailing off of my 22-part EDM production, pop EDM production series that I just finished up. In that series, on the very last video, number 22, we mastered this pre-mastered sort of pop track with some electronic and dance influences in it. We mastered it using just stock Logic plugins, and a lot of people asked if I could do a demonstration on how to master with iZotope. And iZotope, I've been very impressed with it. When I do have to do plugin masters, these are the set of plugins that I go to. And I use a lot of them on individual tracks and bus compression as well. So one little thing I want to get out of the way is just a shameless advertisement. In case you're interested, I now have the entire pop EDM production series up on my website, carneymediagroup.com. If you click on that, you'll see that you can purchase the session content for that series for $25. And if you want to download all 22 videos with no advertisements, completely uncompressed, they're high quality 1440p MP4s, plus the session content, plus the fully mixed pre-master, which I have up here. I'm offering that for $34.95. Again, these are the little things that keep my channel up and running, and I just want to throw that out there real quick before we get started. All right, so let's get into this. I really love this plugin, and like I said before, when you load it up, you'll see that it comes as a suite of individual plugins, which you can use for, track or bus compression or bus processing, or you can load the whole thing up and load up a whole chain of plugins. So what I've done already is I've got my pre-mastered track up here. I've already kind of trimmed it up a little bit. I've also added some volume automation on my master fader, just a quick fade in and a fade out at the end. And the reason why I do that, the reason why I make the master fader have the automation on it, the fades on it, is because it comes after all of the processing that we're going to add here. So with the iZotope Ozone 7 plugin loaded up, let's get started. So I'm just going to get rid of all of these preset plugins that they throw in here. We're going to start from scratch. So the first thing I like to do is bass management. So I'm going to throw the EQ in here. And really all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to pull in a high pass. So this is band number 1. So each one of these little tabs represents a different band that's up here. You can turn each one on or off just by clicking here. So really all I'm doing is throwing in this high pass frequency for bass management. And I usually stick it around 24 or 25 hertz. You can double click and type it in if you like as well. If you want to control the resonance, you can choose some different modes here: flat, resonant, or brick wall. I'm going to go with resonant, and you can adjust the resonance if you want to actually create resonance. Or if we go flat, you'll see that just gives us 3 options, which are essentially slope options. So 12, 24, or 48 dB slope. So I'm going to go with the steepest slope. That's really all we're going to do with the EQ. So we can click right here to insert a new module. So we can click there. Let's add, I do want to do the vintage tape for some color. I want to use the exciter to brighten some things up. And I do want to use the vintage compressor as well for bus compression. Let's start with the exciter. So let's pull the exciter in. The exciter is pretty cool because it's actually a multi-band exciter. It works kind of like Vitamin from Waves does, where you can, it splits the frequency, or splits the full frequency into 4 different bands, and then you can boost, or, well, not cut, but you can boost the harmonics in each band. That's what this is. It's not like an EQ. You're not just boosting a band and an EQ. That would be too easy. What it does is it boosts the harmonics, and boosts the harmonics in many different modes. So there's warm, retro, tape, tube, triode, dual triode. So it uses all these analog circuit, well, not really circuit types, but analog devices, and tries to mimic the harmonic series or a harmonic saturation from those sorts of units. So one of the things I want to do in our track, let's get into like the build-up section. It's like right here. I want a little bit more impact in the mids. I want a little bit more subby bass. I want more bright highs. And I'm going to saturate those areas with the exciter. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's move up to the high end. Let's pull this up. Let's hear what that sounds like. Now, each band, you can actually solo out each band. So if I just want to hear the high band by itself, I can solo that out. And so you can choose the different modes for that. Now, the other cool thing is you can saturate that frequency or that band. You can also pull it up or down. And you can also blend in that saturation with the dry signal. So you're not just dealing with a fully processed signal. So maybe I just want a touch of that enhancement. I can pull the mix knob down a little bit. Let's go to the mid band here. I call this the megaphone band, like the 1, 2 to 5K range. It can get kind of dangerous if you have too much saturation in that range. Here's our mid range. You can hear we don't want too much in there. It gets kind of fizzy. And I'm using the dual triode mode. It's a little softer than the triode and the tube. I'm not going to use, normally I would use tape or warm, but I'm not going to use tape because we're actually going to add the tape plugin on there. Let's enhance the sub a little bit as well. All right, and then all together. And another great thing I love about Ozone is this master bypass, and it's sort of like a latency-free bypass, because sometimes when you bypass up here, the signal will cut back forward, and you press it in, you put the plugin in, and then the delay compensation kicks in, and the signal sort of hiccups a little bit. This gives you a very quick before and after what you've done. So with that, I'm just sort of taking the boxiness out of it and adding some high end into it without using an EQ, because I tend to avoid using EQs other than for, you know, bass management in mastering. All right, next let's add the vintage compressor. There's also, you can also kind of control dynamics with the dynamics plugin, and also the dynamic EQ, which is a really cool plugin that actually kind of works like both an EQ and a compressor at the same time, but it's just not something I'm going to use today, but perhaps I'll get to that in another video. Use the vintage compressor more or less just for color. So let's just do some very, very soft bus compression on this. All right. You can see the gain reduction here. Again, I don't want a ton of gain reduction here. I'm only using a 2.5 to 1 ratio. A lot of people like to make the attack time really quick for bus compression and mastering compression. I don't. I like to pull it up a bit because I like some of the transients to come through a bit. So we're doing something very, very subtle. And by the way, you can solo get rid of, and you can also turn on or off, bypass that one plugin. So if I still want to hear the exciter and the EQ, I can hear those, but then I can just pull out the vintage comp. So let's A/B those, and then we'll A/B the whole thing and see what we've got so far. Yeah, and this is a really cool option here. It automatically adjusts the gain to compensate for loss of volume in the compression process. So you can add manual gain or subtract manual gain here, but if you turn auto on, it'll more or less keep the input and the output signal coming into and out of the compressor roughly the same. Yeah, so just a gentle lift, nothing nothing crazy. Let's move on to our next plugin. Let's go with I'm going to use the vintage tape just for color. We're going to use the imager to do like a nice spread on it. And then we'll add maybe the maximizer and the limiter just so I can show them, but definitely the limiter on the end. Let's go with the imager first. So I love this imager. It's more or less replaced what I used to do with Vitamin in my old mastering and my old mastering sessions. But basically what it does is you can spread each individual band that's shown up here, kind of like with the exciter, we can split the signal into 4 different bands. The imager splits the signal into 4 separate bands. You can choose to make the signal have more stereo width or less stereo width. So if you pull all these down, it's more or less going to sound like it's in mono. And you can see from the vector scope here that that's what it looks like. Everything's straight up and down. There's also a built-in correlation meter, so remember we want this to more or less stay at 0 or above to maintain proper phase coherency. So let's try spreading out some of these bands, and again, you can solo them just like we could before. So let's start with the high band. Move down to the mid band. The mid-low band. I always find the mid-low band, and I always had the same trouble in Vitamin as well, is the mid-low band, I want to spread it so bad because because it's always the frequencies where your mix can sound muddy, and when you spread it, it sort of gets rid of that muddiness, but it also causes a ton of phase issues because it's where a lot of like the meat of the song is. So I'm only going to spread that just a touch. And the bass I'm actually going to pull down because I want the bass to be less stereo. I want the low frequencies to be more mono. So let's give that a listen, make sure that our correlation meter is staying above 0. So you can see we're barely staying above 0 and we're going below in a few spots. Let's try taking the mid-high band down, because sometimes when you push this up, it sounds really cool, but it also, you sort of lose the center impact, the mid-range impact. Yeah, it's one of those really tempting things. Like you really want to pull these up to create a really cool stereo spread, but sometimes it messes with your phase coherency. One of the other cool things you can do is you can actually click the mono button here, and it puts the whole plugin in mono, so you can check and see what it sounds like in mono and make sure there's not too much left to right cancellation going on. Let's move to the drop section here. Yeah, this synths and electronic music is always has issues with phase. But you know I could. It's 3 a.m. I got this feeling I will never leave. Yeah, verse sounds pretty good. All right, so that's what I'm going to do there. You can also stereoize the signal. Not 100% sure what that does yet. I think it can make things that are more mono and sort of artificially create a stereo signal out of them. I've tried playing around with it before, and it sounds cool, but before I do like a full series on something like this, I'll make sure I look that up. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it off for now. Okay, so that's the imager. Let's throw in the vintage tape. Now this is just purely for color. This is a tape emulation. You can pull the bias up to be more bass heavy, to be more sort of brittle and bright. So that's really what the bias does here. You can go with 15 IPS, it's inches per second, or 30 IPS tape emulation. With 30 IPS, inches per second, you're going to have a brighter sound. With 15 IPS, you're going to have a darker sound. Sometimes I use this plugin on vocals to tame down highs in very shrill vocals, and I'll go to the 15 IPS setting. For this, we're going to use 30 IPS. And what we actually get from this plugin is very subtle unless you use some really extreme settings. So I'm probably going to go with a little bit more bass heavy. Input drive, I'll keep the same. We'll boost up the harmonic range, boost the low end emphasis, but also boost the high end emphasis. And let's see what this sounds like. So you hear the boost like in the bass, the snare drum doesn't sound so thin, it's got a little bit more meat to it. Again, everything we're doing here is very subtle, and then by the end, after we've done everything we want to do, we end up with a result that's drastically different from the original. All right, next, just so I can show it, I'm going to show the maximizer just to get some gain, and then we'll use the vintage limiter at the end as our brick wall limiter. So let's throw the maximizer in there. Maximizer works a lot like a limiter. And it's got some different IRC settings here. Honestly, I'm not really sure what the difference between all four of them is. I just more or less go with the one that sounds good. You can pull your threshold down. You can pull your limiter ceiling down. Really, all I want to get out of this is I don't want to get like brick wall limiting out of it. I just want to get some minor gain boosting, and then I also want to play with the transient emphasis so that we can make sure that through maximizing our volume, we're still maintaining a transient heavy song, because it is dance music and the kick and the snare really need to come through. You can also unlink the left and right channels. So if you've got material where the left and right channels are kind of drastically different from each other, you can unlink them a bit so that they're more independently compressed or limited. I'll pull that up just a touch, just to sort of balance the maximizer on the left and right channel. You can also choose what character you want. So for something that's slower, more like ballad type, you can choose slow, and it's not going to be as transient heavy. But something like this, it's very transient heavy. I want to use something that's more of like a fast character to it. So let's listen to that with and without. So it just gives us a little bit of a boost. All right, so you're only able to put 6 modules in any single iZotope Ozone plugin. So in order to add our limiter to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another instance of Ozone. We could probably get rid of the EQ and then just make the EQ a different plugin before Ozone, but I'm just going to do it this way since since we've already loaded all this other stuff in. But real quick, let's listen to this with and without everything, and I'm just gonna hit the bypass button so we can hear what everything sounds like. The vocals are a lot more in your face. The whole thing just sounds thicker. The bass is tighter. And then we've got that stereo width coming through as well. All right, so let's throw our limiter on here. So I'm going to go under iZotope. And instead of loading, actually, no, I will load the whole plugin again because there's something else I want to show you in here. So just load a second instance of Ozone. Get rid of everything that's on here. There we go. And then throw the vintage limiter in there. Vintage limiter, very, very simple limiter. We honestly could have used the maximizer as a limiter too, but I'm just going to do it this way just to show another one of the plugins. I like this since it's got 3 modes. It's got analog, tube, and modern. It's got 3 sort of analog emulating modes, and we can try them out and see which one we like the best. There's a character slider as well, so we're going to go with more fast because it's more punchy. Our threshold is going to, as we pull this down, is going to limit it, but also simultaneously increase the gain. We can set our output ceiling wherever we want it for mastering, so I'll put it at -0.0 or -0.1. You can also turn on true peak limiting. If you do that, make sure you pull your ceiling down a little bit more because sometimes you can still clip with true peak limiting on. I believe true peak limiting just better limits and more realistically limits transients and doesn't let anything through. So it actually truly limits the peaks as opposed to just truncating the tip top of them. So let's give this a listen and I'll pull the threshold down. What I should also do is have my stereo out or just right after the iZotope plugin, wherever you want it. I'm going to add Logic's under metering, Logic's loudness meter, just so I can monitor my loudness because I want to shoot for -10 LU. There we go. If you're using another DAW, you can find a different LU meter. Let's just jump around and reset it a few times. Yeah, the analog mode's a little warmer. The tubes sounds a little thinner, but it's got a little bit more like mid-range and high-range bite to it. I think I actually like the modern one here. For rock and roll music, I'd like this one better, but for dance music, I like the modern character more. So the other thing I wanted to show you within the iZotope plugin, actually let me pull the threshold up just a touch because we're a bit too loud, is you can actually, in addition to being able to like audition your song in mono, and then swap the left and right channels, you can also apply dithering right within the plugin. So this is when you're going to bounce down your master to a different bit depth, which is very common. Right now, we've got a 24-bit session that has a sample rate of 48K. Now, downgrading from 48K to 44.1K doesn't really matter so much, but downgrading from 24-bit to 16-bit CD quality does matter, and you need to dither, or you're supposed to dither. Essentially what it does is it optimizes the word length reduction from going from 24-bit down to 16-bit. So you can turn on the dither option, then click on the dither button here to pull up the dithering options, choose what bit depth you're going to convert down to, and you can choose how much dithering you want. It's actually pretty hard to hear the difference, but when you have the controls right here in front of you, you can kind of hear the difference between them. Let me play it for you, and I'll click around, and you can get the difference between strong and low and max and lowest. So it looks like the higher the noise shaping, the more it sort of cuts out the mid-high audible range, our most sensitive frequencies between 1 and 10K. I'm just going to go with medium on both. I honestly don't hear much of a difference. And you can also filter DC offset, so that's direct current offset if your waveform is slightly off-center from the middle of the waveform. So you can automatically do that here. In the previous video series I did, we did it with the DC offset button within the adaptive limiter in Logic. So that's just dithering. Another really cool thing you can do that it's not really going to affect us here, but you can audition and see what your song is going to sound like at various MP3 and AAC formats. You can also solo the codec artifacts. So if ultimately your song is going to go on iTunes in AAC format, you know, you can listen to what your master is going to sound like compressed without actually compressing it. If you're going to go to MP3, you can set it to all the different bit rates for MP3 and hear what it's going to sound like. And if you want to hear all the artifacts produced from each of those compression bit rates, you can click here and it'll just play the artifacts. So if I want to hear what the song is going to sound like as a super low quality 96K MP3, we keep on rolling like a one else I'd rather be with, but you know I could. It's 3 a.m. I got this feeling I'll never leave. So you can hear at 96K, a lot of the high end gets scooped out. It gets kind of gargly in the high end. At 320K, it's virtually lossless, but we can still listen to the artifacts imposed by the compression. So those are the artifacts produced from 320K. So this isn't how you're going to convert the file. It's just a matter of, it's just a way for you to sort of audition to see what the song's going to sound like when it's compressed. All right, so we're all done there. All we really have to do now is just set our bounce range and then just bounce the track out. So in Logic, I hit Command B. I'm going to bounce it out as a PCM type uncompressed file. I'm going to go with a WAV file. We're going to go down to, since we dithered to 16-bit within the plugin, we need to make sure that the resolution that we bounce out at is 16-bit. The sample rate for CD quality is 44.1, so we're going to convert down. And since we dithered within the iZotope plugin, we don't have to dither here, so we can actually turn off the dithering here. And then we'll just say offline and no normalization. Bounce out the track, give it a name, whatever you want to call it, and it bounces it out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will let you hear the whole track from beginning to end if you want to hear what the final result sounds like. But yeah, that's using iZotope Ozone 7 for mastering. It's a really, really cool plugin. You can master tracks very quickly and very efficiently. You can save full mastering presets, which is really cool. I plan on doing a full series on iZotope Ozone. If you guys want to see it, just let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you'd like to see that. What my plan was to go over the entire suite of plugins that come with it and do like one video, one tutorial on each plugin that's within it. So one for the vintage compressor, one for the equalizer, one for the dynamic EQ. So ultimately it'll be, I can't remember exactly how many plugins are in it offhand, but there'll be one video for each one of those, and I'll use them on different sources, on individual tracks within a session, on bus processing, as well as for mastering. So it won't just be for mastering, but although that seems to be what Ozone is used mostly for, but I find myself using some of their plugins for mixing as well. Again, if you'd like to purchase my whole 22-part EDM pop production series, I'll make sure there's a link to that in the video below. And I will leave you with a complete playthrough of the entire song. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Tell me how you love me, tell me that you need me, tell me that I'm everything you want me to be. Tell me how I'm fearless, tell me I'm your weakness. You got it bad, you got it bad, so bad, so bad. A fire got me going good. It's 2 a.m. I got you higher than she ever could. Just let me give you you all the secrets to my fantasies. I promise every night that I will have you begging please. You got me going like a fire, got me going good. I promise every night I'll treat you like she always should. You got me going, got me burning, got me going good. I promise every night I love you like she never could. Tell me how you love me, tell me that you need me, tell me that I'm everything you want me to be. Tell me how I'm fearless, tell me I'm your weakness. You got it bad, you got it bad, so bad, so bad. You got it 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 bad, so we keep on rolling like a fire, like we always should. There's no one else I'd rather be with, but you know I could. It's 3 a.m., I got this feeling I will never leave. Just tell me everything that you could ever want from me. You got me going like a fire, got me going good. I promise every night I'll treat you like she always should. You got me going, got me burning, got me going good. I promise every night I love you like she never could. Tell me how you love